Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're dialing it from. And welcome. Today you're going to learn about the fifth commandment as it is presented in the book of the law. So as it is presented in this book of the law, and not as it is, or as some of the commandments are presented in the scriptures found in the Bible. So like we do, I will give you a quick overview to remind you of the context. First of all, these commandments were given by the voice of the Most High in Mount Sinai, also called Mount Horeb. They were given to Moses and to all of Isolele. Though Moses and the elders of Isolele only went into the mountain, and Moses alone received the tables of the law or the tablets of the law, all Isolele, all of Israel, heard the voice of the Most High. They heard it with their own ears when he gave them these commandments. Secondly, the commandments were written on tablets of stone by the very finger of the Most High, Tatanzambi. Moses broke these tables or tablets, as we know, after which he had to prepare two other tablets, and the Most High wrote the same words of the commandments on those tables, the second ones. And later on, those tables or tablets were placed in the Ark of the Covenant and kept within the tabernacle, and the tabernacle was within the temple until the Babylonian captivity. So that's the background within which we discuss these commandments. Think of yourself as Isolele, one of the peoples as part of our ancestors, and you're around Mount Sinai, and you're hearing the voice of the Most High. That is the context that we're in. So what is this fifth commandment? This is the fifth commandment that you're seeing in front of your screen as presented in the book of the law. Let us listen to it.
Honor thy father and thy mother. Give heed to their commandments, obey their laws, and depart not from their precepts. Reverence their age, and seek unto their house all the days of thy life. Exalt not thyself against them, nor withhold to build up their house above thine own. Honor and obey the king and the judges, and the rulers, and all that are set in authority, for they are as fathers among the people. That they may be a fear unto evildoers, and the priest also, who stands before the Lord, that he may instruct thee, and thy days shall be long upon the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee.
Okay, so those are the words of the Most High when he was giving them this commandment. Now, there's some words in here that I don't want to assume that we all know what they mean. So we're going to start out by looking at the definition of these words. Specifically, we're going to look at the word commandments, laws, and precepts, so that as we get into discussion, we will have a clear understanding of these words and what they mean. So let's start out by looking at the first one, which is commandments. According to the English dictionary, a commandment is an act or the power of commanding. You can also describe it as something that you're commanded to do. The word commandment, which is the act or the power, is derived from the word command. And what is to command? It is to direct authoritatively. That is the first definition, to direct authoritatively. It is also to exercise a dominating influence. To exercise a dominating influence. As I describe this, or as I read these definitions, picture yourself on Mount Sinai and think of who is directing authoritatively, who is exercising a dominating influence. It is to order or to request to be given something. That is what a command is. Think of the times you have directed somebody or a child or somebody under your authority and you've directed them authoritatively. You've issued a command, you know, you've exercised that dominating influence, maybe over a child or, your subordinates at work. That is what issuing a command is, according to the English language. Now, let us look and see what the scriptures define a commandment as. So the word commandment is actually translated from, or is used to refer to mouth. That is the first meaning, or it's derived, it means the mouth. It also means a weight equal to 1/3 of a shekel. So this word for mouth, as you can see, commandment, that is what they translated it. You can obviously think of the fact that these words were coming from the mouth of the Most High. The root word for this pair, the root word is pa, and it has a connotation of cleaving in pieces, the way you break a rock into smaller pieces, or breaking into pieces, or shattering. But there's also a definition that is about puffing. There's this idea of blowing away or scattering into corners. So that is what a commandment is. It's something, the root word here is showing that it's something that is verbalized, spoken from a mouth. Just like we see this voice of the Most High was speaking to them out of his mouth. Okay, that's commandment. Let's look at the next one, the word law. Now, there's 6 definitions that I've highlighted in here. Number 1, number 2, number 3, and so on until number 6. But I want you to pay attention to the first and the second one. The first one is in green here, and the second one is in green here. I think those are the ones that are going to be relevant for us. The rest are still definitions of law, but they're not relevant in this context. So the first one says, the word law is a binding custom or practice of a community. Then it goes on to say it's a rule of conduct or actions prescribed or formally recognized as binding or enforced by a controlling authority. So which community would this be referring to? In this context at Mount Sinai, you can think about that. Who is gonna be the one that prescribes this? Think about that. Or who is prescribing this? And who is enforcing this law? So that's the first definition of the word law that is relevant for us. The second one is that it's the revelation of the will of the Most High as set forth in the Old Testament. This is where this word law came from. Okay, so the Most High is the one giving his will. He's giving us the direction or telling us what he wants us to do. That is described as the law. This is according to the English language from this dictionary here, Merriam-Webster. Let's look at what the scriptures define the word law as. So the word for law is Torah, and the meaning is direction or instruction. So the Most High was giving Isolele direction. He was giving them instructions. It's as simple as that. Instructions or directions on how to live, on how to relate to him. Think about when you want to go from one place to another and you don't know how to get there, and somebody gives you direction. They're giving you guidance. That is the law. That is what the Most High was doing here. He was talking to Isole, just 3 months after they had left Egypt as slaves, after he had delivered them. And now he's telling them, here are instructions on how you will conduct yourselves when you're in the promised land. And when they got there, Moses reminded them again, just before they entered the promised land. Moses reminded them, guys, when you go in, this is how you're to live, just like you were told a long time ago. So the root word here is yara, and it talks about casting, pointing out, or instructing. Again, direction, instruction, that's the law. Now let's jump to the third one, which is precept. Two meanings here from the English language, a command or a principle. I like the second one, principle, intended especially as a general rule of action. Okay, a principle intended as a general rule of action. Then the second one says an order issued by legally constituted authority to a subordinate official. Let's talk about the principle, the first one. When I think of principles that I see in the scriptures, I can give an example that in Genesis chapter 1, I think it's around verse 27, when the Most High said, let us give them dominion over the birds, over the fish, over the animals. That was a principle. The Most High gave his creation, especially Adam and Eve, the human beings, dominion over animals, birds, fish. He did not give them dominion over their fellow human beings. So that's a principle. You may be in power, but you're not going to be ruling over people in that sense of having dominion over people. No, you have dominion over animals, birds, fish, not people. So that's a principle, an example. When it comes to this second point or definition in the English language, notice that it says a legally constituted authority, an order issued by a legally constituted authority. In the context of discussing the commandments, only the Most High has the legal, constituted, and sovereign authority to issue precepts. Why do I say that? Because he is the only one who has the legal right to what he created. When he constituted, remember the verse I just mentioned in Genesis, it says, let us. So whoever that plurality is got together, and they are the ones in the Most High who have the authority because they created everything. So they constituted themselves as us and they issued the precepts. They are the only ones with the authority to issue the precepts, or the Most High is the only one with the authority legally. It's not any empire. It's not any government. It's not any organization or any other or any individual that can issue a precept. So just disregard all those precepts that some organizations, some governments, whether they're national or international, think that they are issuing. It's not up to them to tell us what the times and the laws are. No, the Most High is the only one who can do that. That's a precept. What do the scriptures define a precept as? Okay, first meaning comes from this word sav, and the root word is savia. It sounds very close to my Kamba dialect because we say tavia, which is to command or to issue an ordinance. So this is an ordinance issued by the Most High. This is the word that they translated as a precept. You know, And the idea here is that you give a charge, you give orders, because you're the only one who can issue that as the Most High. So think of it as an ordinance. That's what a precept is. Okay, now that we've looked at those big words and we have a fair understanding of what they are, let's jump into this commandment and break it down. So here we are given the do's and don'ts of how to honor your father and mother. These are the action words. These are the verbs in here. Okay. So the first one is to honor them. And then it starts breaking it down, just like that word that we saw is breaking down into pieces. So we are told to give heed, pay attention. That's what giving heed means. Give heed, pay attention by acting the way you're being told to act. And you're being told to pay heed, okay, give heed. You're also told to obey. You're obeying something, the laws that we just talked about. We're being told, do not depart from those precepts that we talked about. Do not depart. So stick to the lane that you've been given. Stick to the directions that you've been given. It's very simple. Reverence. To reverence is to treat with respect and recognition of a person of higher authority than yourself. So reverence their age. They're older than you. Your father and mother are older than you. Reverence their age. Seek unto their house. This means be concerned of their well-being. Their house is their well-being, because that's where they live. That's where they do everything. It refers to their existence, their well-being, their family, their extended family. Seek unto their house. So be concerned with their well-being. Their upkeep, here it says again, says, build up their house, build up their house. This is concerning their upkeep, build up their house above your own. So just because they're older and you think they have their own house, that they should take care of their house, no, you should be looking out to make sure that if there's a leaking roof, that it's taken care of. If there's some messed up plumbing, it's taken care of. If they're not able to physically fix some things, you take care of it. That's their upkeep. They're retired. Don't expect them to go and work. Take care of them. But then, we are also told to honor and obey. It's the same thing. But now we're being told to honor and obey kings, judges, rulers. We're going to come into that next, right? But I want you to notice that here, when it talks about the priest, it says this priest stands before the Most High so that he may instruct you. So why are we being told to do all these things to our mothers and fathers, and then we're told about these other people, kings, judges, rulers, and so on? We're going to see that next. But before I move on, I want to emphasize that we are also given the effect of honoring your mother, father, king, judges, and these guys. The effect is that the Most High says, your days shall be long upon the land which thy Lord or the Most High will give you. Okay, now let's take a look. We've seen what we are supposed to do or not do, the do's and don'ts. Let's look at who is this talking about, this commandment. Okay, let's go to this next one. So here it says, honor your father and your mother. Heed their commandments. So it's still talking about the father and mother, their laws. It's not talking even about the Most High's laws. It's talking about your father and mother's commandments and their laws, their age, their house. Still talking about your father and mother, right? them there. Then it talks about a king. Okay. So I started scratching my head, I started saying, wait a minute. My father was not a king. My mother was not a queen or a judge or a ruler. Where do these other people come in, including the priests? So this commandment, 19 times, is talking about people in authority. People in authority in your house, your father and mother, people in authority in your community or your nation, the kings, judges, rulers, priests, all these people are considered as people of authority. Then I started realizing, wait a minute, if these guys were leaving, had just left Egypt, they were being given the structure of their society, that the person in authority first is the parents in the households, and then as a nation of Isolele, they were going to have kings, and that is where we have the current governments creating what they call the executive. You got the president and all the secretaries of state or cabinet ministers. Then you have the judges. The judges are the judiciary. You know, the rulers is the legislature. You got parliament, you got Congress, whatever you call it in your countries. Then you have the others. These are your other enforcement agencies or other government agencies. You might have the police. You might have your border patrol. You might have your investigative arms. All those are other agencies that are being recognized as authorities that have been set in place. So the nations of the world took this structure from the commandments, a structure that was given by the Most High. But notice when it comes to the priests, most nations today do not have a priest. Yet it says here, a priest is the one who stands before the Most High so that he may instruct us. So the priest is really up here with the kings, just like we see in the scriptures. Some of them were prophets, or they were high priests. And they're the ones who the Most High spoke to, and they gave the message to the king, good or bad. And the king had to execute that message in his kingdom or in his territory. So this structure that we have here, unfortunately, in today's modern governments or kingdoms, we lack the priests. Remember the scripture in Hosea that says, my people perish for a lack of knowledge because they have rejected the law, I will also reject them. Who was implementing the law? It was the priests. Who was communicating, receiving the message of the law? It is the Most High was giving it to the priests. He's giving it to them here when they're leaving Egypt, and he's telling them, these are the directions, these are the instructions of how you're going to be living. But somewhere down the line, humanity lost this. In fact, they separated state or government and church, right? So that's where we went wrong, in my view. All right, I think I've beaten that horse enough. Let's look at something else here. So what was this commandment talking about? It was talking about authorities like your father and mother, and keeping those commandments, those laws, maintaining the house of your parents, obeying and following or heeding what those in authority tell you to do, as well as the priests. They are part of the authority structure because they're the ones who will instruct us. Okay. And again, in yellow there, just emphasizing the end result is that you will be rewarded by the Most High to live many days upon the land which you've been given. Okay. Um, just one more summary here. Honor. Who are you honoring? Your father and, not or. It's and. Your father and your mother. It's not your father and your father. That structure is not here. It's not your mother and your mother. There's one father and there's one mother, and you're supposed to honor both of them. Okay? But your father and mother are indeed a symbol of authority. Just like you have other authorities like kings and judges, these are other authorities that have been set in place by the Most High. So you're supposed to honor them all, right? That's what this commandment is telling us. Now let's take a look and see how this commandment is presented in the so-called Bible. In the so-called Bible that we are very familiar with, you have in the book of Exodus, between chapter 20, verse 1 and verse 17 is where you find the commandments. And in verse 12, it says, honor thy father and thy mother, which is the first part of what we have in the book of the law. And then it skips all those lines in between there and comes down here and tells us about the days may be long upon the land, the effect of honoring your mother and father. So this is it. We just get that first line in green and that last line in green. Exodus does not tell us that this father and mother are literal. Yes, we know that. It tells us that, but it does not tell us, the book of Exodus in this chapter 20 does not tell us that the father and your mother are also metaphorically representing the other authorities in your community and in your nation. Such authorities as kings, judges, rulers, priests. They are not telling us that in the Bible, in Exodus. It's very sad, but at least now we know. So we can be glad about that. But it is not in the book of Exodus. All this stuff was left out. Let's take a look at the other part of the scriptures, which is Deuteronomy chapter 5. You find the commandments between verse 7 and verse 21. What does it say in verse 16? Same thing. They give us the first line, honor thy father and thy mother. Then they add something in here and they say, as the Lord your God has commanded thee, okay, that thy days may be prolonged and that it may go well with thee in the land, which is the last line down here. Now, we did understand that Moses was repeating the book of the law to the nation of Israel as they were about to enter the promised land. That is what he's repeating in Deuteronomy. So maybe Moses was not reading verbatim from the book of the law. So maybe it's Moses who just summarized and gave them the first line and the last line. But clearly, we should have had the book of the law and the full commandment somewhere in the so-called Bible, if that is supposed to be the canon of scripture or books provided by the Most High. So just to wrap up, again, let's listen to this commandment.
Honor thy father and thy mother. Give heed to their commandments, obey their laws, and depart not from their precepts. Reverence their age, and seek unto their house all the days of thy life. Exalt not thyself against them, nor withhold to build up their house above thine own. Honor and obey the king and the judges, and the rulers, and all that are set in authority, for they are as fathers among the people. That they may be a fear unto evildoers, and the priest also, who stands before the Lord, that he may instruct thee, and thy days shall be long upon the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee.